I'm delighted to welcome Richard Jobson to KIRKCALDY Film Festival. Richard's premiering his film WAYLAND'S song at the festival. Welcome, Richard.
Well, thank you for inviting me to this wonderful festival here in Kirkcaldy, the Can of the North.
Now, Richard, I do some stuff for Veterans Assist, which is a veterans organisation. We deal with issues regarding homelessness, alcohol dependency, anything that would affect anyone coming from the forces. You've tackled some of these themes of people serving in Afghanistan and Iraq in your films. What makes you tackle these controversial themes?
Well, I have been dealing with the issue of how people deal with conflict from the days, the very early days of my songs with the Skids. Songs like Into the Valley, The Saints Are Coming, Working for the Yankee Dollar, Melancholy Soldiers, and on it goes, really, were all songs that dealt with a situation that unfolded in front of me as a young guy in Central Fife who had a lot of friends from different backgrounds who really just wanted to do what young guys wanted to do, you know, get a job, get some clothes, find a girl, hang out, listen to some great music. But in fact, getting a job was the really hard part, and it was very, very difficult for a lot of those young guys to find jobs. The mines were closing, the dockyard wasn't recruiting anymore, certainly in the Central Fife area. So a lot of them ended up joining, the only people that were recruiting heavily were the Black Watch, you know, and the army in Central Fife, and a lot of them did join up, and I intended to as well, you know, even though I was a little bit younger. And they went to Northern Ireland and they came back and they had changed, dramatically changed. You know, they had saw things that I think had obviously traumatized them in some kind of way and had a very serious effect. And there was no backup there for them. You know, people were inclined to think of army guys as being kind of alpha male, you know, a little bit more macho, and that, you know, anything that had happened that had in some way traumatized them would have been a sign of weakness, so they didn't really talk about it. And some of them came back as bigots, I might add, as well. So a lot of those songs were about the world around me. I just wrote about them in a different way. So my recent films, like The Somnambulist and now WAYLAND'S song, I think really it's almost come full circle. Here I am again talking about the same subject, different conflict, different situation, same result. You know, young guys, young women coming back from a place where, you know, they've been in a kind of hell, and they're coming back to a country that in many ways has turned its back on them and doesn't really want to know. So, you know, somewhere in my movies, I'm trying to create a storyline that in some ways engages with an audience, but at the same time deals with very serious issues. And so I feel that it's something that I've always been dealing with. It's not new. It's something that I dealt with when I was as young as 16, when I saw the result it had on my friends. And now, well, I'm certainly not 16 anymore, I'm working in a different medium, but I'm dealing with the same subject matter, but in a different way.
Now, in your new movie, WAYLAND'S song, the protagonist is a man, soldier coming back from Afghanistan. He was a sniper. Obviously, he's damaged in some way. What do you think will be the mental health legacy for those coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan that have served in the forces?
Well, I think the mental health legacy of the conflict in Afghanistan is something, the kind of the horror of which we have really yet to be, it's yet to reveal itself to us. And I think there's a lot of young men and women who have been deeply traumatized by their experiences out there, fighting an invisible enemy in incredibly difficult circumstances. And with, I'm sure at the back of their mind, although they were doing a professional job, were questioning the fact, what the hell are we doing here in the first place? And the same was true of Iraq, which was just an absolute catastrophe. So I think the legacy of that is something that's yet to reveal itself. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's young men and women coming back from that horror who have been left to their own devices, and they certainly find solace in alcohol, maybe drugs, and violence. If you've created a specimen of, a kind of raw power that you have tuned into a killing zone, and then you expect them to come home and go down to the local Cafe Nero and have a nice frappuccino, you're having a laugh, aren't you? I mean, so this is what I'm trying to deal with in Wayland's song. The guy's a trained killer. He's been killing 25 people a day through a telescope where you can see the people smile, you can see their eyes. It's a personal thing that he's seen. These are not anonymous kills. And yet he's got to come back to this country where nobody really gives a shit. Nobody cares about him. So he wreaks revenge on the society around him because he does what he does best. He prosecutes his art, which is death.
Do you think the government does enough for ex-servicemen?
I don't think the government does do enough for ex-servicemen, and I think it's been left to the charity zones. Like Help for Heroes, of course, is something that has been a flagship program and it's done incredibly well, although there's elements of that I feel are questionable in some of the things that they do, and but I guess you could question any charity in a way that the way that it's structured. Do they need big fancy offices, and do they need executives being paid lots of money, etc.? You could say, well, it's a business, so they probably do, but I've always had a problem with charities having that kind of structure. But then again, you should say to yourself, why is it that the kind of largest donations are coming through something like Help for Heroes to help veterans of these conflicts, recent conflicts? Why do we not, as a people, do it? And I think it would be easy enough for somebody to stand up in national television and say, I think it's time we all put our hands in our pockets and actually, did something. And I think people would respond to that. Not through guilt, I think through conscience. I think a lot of people in this country are very anti-military conflict, but that doesn't mean to say they're anti the military, and I think these are two different things entirely. And as I say, my position on it has always been about people having a job, an opportunity, a choice of a kind. So these are the choices that people make. If you join the British military, then you may well be in a conflict because of the nature of this country. It may be changing though at last, and I think that's a good thing.
Now you're here in Kirkcaldy to premiere your new film, Wayland's Song. I'm bound to ask this question: what's next for you after Wayland's Song?
Well, I'm delighted to be here in Kirkcaldy. The film's premiering next week in London and Glasgow and Cambridge and lots of other places, but I chose Kirkcaldy to be the first place that the film is shown in the UK because I was born here. The story in many ways was born from my experiences in Central Fife, and I think it's really important that people who do what I do take their projects to places like Kirkcaldy and talk about them and show their work, and don't hide behind that kind of, I'll be in a big city tonight, and take it to the real places where real people live who often don't get an opportunity to see these kind of things and hear you talking about them. So I've always been very passionate about that. I'm going to do my next movie. I'm going to do the third part of my war trilogy. It's called Vexations, and it's about a man who has been rendered, as in some form of rendition has gone on, but he never knows why he was kept captive, and he never understands who the people who have imprisoned him, and doesn't understand who they are. But the film is really about what keeps you alive in a world of horror, and I believe it's the imagination. So the thing that keeps my character alive is his imagination. So I recently made a film about sex trafficking called The Journey, and I used a lot of gaming ideas in the film. It was quite a radical film, and I'm going to do that with this one. So it's the third part, and then I think I've done my bit in that field. So probably a nice light-hearted romantic comedy next, or something like that.
Final question, Richard. Skids reunion anytime soon?
Well, the Skids reunion in 2010 was based on a whole variety of things that suddenly presented themselves. There was a retrospective of some of the things that I'd done, and there was a kind of general feeling that it would be a good thing to do, and so I went along with it, and it was great fun, and I got my mates to film it, and we made a DVD, and it was a lot of fun. You know, I had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But it's not what I'm about, you know, and I've got a lot of energy still, but that energy will start to sap, and I've got to just stay with the work that I've because there's a whole body of work that I want to create, and that was a kind of little tributary, and it was fun. It was great fun, and the music still was vibrant and alive. But we don't have any new songs, you know. We're not going to write any new songs. Stuart Adamson's dead, you know, and he was the key to the Skids, not me. So, no. The answer is no. We won't be getting back together again, that I'm aware of. But you know, you never know.
Richard Jobson, thank you very much.
Thank you. I better get in there. I can see them going. Oh Christ!
Thank you very much.
No, my pleasure. No, my pleasure.